I'd like to talk about one element of the MarineMaster 300 that has always been a bit controversial, and that is the luminous paint application at the hour markers. As you can see here, it's uneven, and some have described it as puffy. They've used various adjectives, but the main point here is it's not smooth the way you would expect it to be. Initially, it was viewed as a poor quality control issue, but over the years, the going theory became that it's uneven because it is hand applied. That never made much sense to me, and today I'd like to present my theory on what is actually causing it. The first step I'd like to do is compare the kind of luminous paint application Seiko uses in their other high-end sports watches. Here is an example of a Darth Tuna dial. And as you can see, the luminous paint application looks just about perfect. But the main difference between this and the MarineMaster Lume is volume. This is a very, very shallow application. If I had to guess it, you could describe it almost like a button being transferred or a sticker being transferred onto the dial by whatever machine that makes it. It's very, very narrow, and when you go back to the MarineMaster hour markers, you'll see that they hold a lot more luminous material than this. And that, I think, is the first clue as to what's going on here. Another point I'd like to add to this is that, to my knowledge, only the MarineMaster 300 uses relatively high volume luminous paint in its markers. All of the tuna cans, the MarineMaster 600 spring drive, they all use relatively small volumes of luminous paint, and they all look like little buttons, and they're all very, very even. And it's only the MarineMaster that has this relatively high volume luminous paint application. The second point I'd like to make is if you do a Google search for uneven lume watch, you get a surprising number of hits from Rolex forums where people state that they have a similar issue with contemporary sports watches like the Explorer 2 and the Submariner. I found that very, very interesting, and when I started reading up on the individual threads, I started to see the same exact complaints. Taking it a step further, what do these watches have in common with the MarineMaster 300? Well, first of all, these watches have higher volume hour markers, much like the MarineMaster. And second of all, they're using basically the same superluminova. So putting two and two together, my working theory on why this happens in certain types of watches seems to be related to the volume of luminous paint that are using. It seems that watches that require higher volumes of the luminous paint to go into the hour markers have this problem. So I'm thinking perhaps when it's applied in paste or liquid form by whatever machine that does it, as it solidifies, there's some sort of physical or chemical reaction that causes it to not evenly and smoothly solidify. Whereas if you compare it to the example of the Darth Tuna I showed, where you have a lot of watches like that too, where the luminous paint is just like this little low volume button, you don't seem to have that happen. So I'm thinking that when you have a large volume of luminous paint that has to dry, for some reason, if it's not mixed properly or it's just the nature of the chemical itself, it doesn't always dry evenly. And this is clearly a problem that goes outside of the MarineMaster 300, as evidenced by a number of Rolex sports watch owners complaining about it. And a number of them on the forum even goes so far as to say that this is a very common complaint for these types of watches. And if you go to the Rolex Service Center, it's hit or miss as to whether they'll tell you this is within their tolerance or they're going to replace the dial. So clearly this is a more widespread problem. Anyway, that's the evidence that I put forth to support my theory. If I'm completely wrong and off base, I'm happy to be corrected, or if anyone has any additional information to add to this to help figure out what's going on, I'm very happy to hear other perspectives. But that's about it for this video, and as usual, thanks for watching.